Hi, my name's Terry Rich. I'm a birder and ornithologist here in Boise, Idaho. In this talk, I want to cover the basics of one of the oldest bird monitoring programs, probably anywhere in the world, certainly in North America, the Audubon Christmas bird count. There are a lot of bird monitoring programs in North America. Here are just a few. There are probably literally hundreds. They vary from programs that are designed to monitor particular species, like you can see here the mourning dove or the American woodcock. But a lot of programs, such as those for waterfowl and nocturnal owls and so on, are designed to monitor a whole group of species, typically sharing some sort of habitat or some sort of space. And then those data may be collected at the continental level or at a rather more local level. For example, the Mountain Birdwatch program in New England is designed to monitor those bird populations just in some mountain ranges up in that part of the world. The population trend is a really critical piece, maybe in many ways the most important piece in the species assessment process. This is a process that Partners in Flight in particular has devoted decades to now. The first, I think, first proposal for the method came out in 1992. So Partners in Flight scientists have been working on this and refining this method for almost 30 years now. You can see the 6 factors that are assessed there for each species, and they're then scored from 1 to 5, 1 being low vulnerability and 5 being high vulnerability. And you can just simply sum those up or combine those scores in some other way to find out which species are most in need of conservation action and which are maybe doing fine or even increasing. So population trend is really a big one. These assessments and the population trend data are used in a variety of ways. These are 2 rather recent publications. Both came out in 2016. The one with the evening grosbeak is the Partners in Flight Land Bird Conservation Plan, and the one on the right is the one from the North American Bird Conservation Initiative that covers all birds, not just land birds, and also includes Mexico. The most recent way that population trend data and other data were used to prepare a report is shown in this website. There's also a publication in Science Magazine and some other pubs, but you can go to this website, 3 Billion Birds Gone, where it's demonstrated that 1 in 4 of our birds have disappeared since 1970. That's 3 billion out of what was 12 billion birds are gone. And so the population trend data are really important in helping us make these sorts of judgments, and then again, prioritizing species for conservation action. Conservation resources are always limited, people, money, and you have to put it to use in the best possible place. When you look for Christmas bird count graphics, as I have done here, you'll see a lot of stuff from the eastern US. So you get cardinals and catbirds and blue jays and things like that. I was happy to find a western tanager. I think that's from Seattle Audubon. But a lot of the stuff is dominated by eastern birds in eastern states. The local Christmas bird counts are shown here as far as of December 2nd, that is. These can all be found at the Golden Eagle Audubon Society's website. You can go to events, and then you can look down and see when, not only when each of these Christmas bird counts is held, but where to meet, other things about how to prepare. And with COVID still going on, there's probably some pretty clear instructions about being safe and how people are going to handle it this year. As of this talk, I had not found a date for Garden Valley or Bruno, so if you're interested in those geographic areas, go back to the Golden Eagle website and see if there's some updated information there. So the Audubon Christmas bird count, like I said, it's the oldest bird monitoring program in North America. It actually started in 1900. People used to go out on Christmas, around Christmas, and shoot as many things as they could. It was a big old competition. People like Frank Chapman, even so long ago, thought that that was not what we should be doing with our birds and decided, hey, let's go out and count them instead. So the count period, it's not just Christmas Day. In fact, probably very few counts are actually conducted on Christmas Day, but there's a count period here you can see from 14 December to the 5th of January. The birds are counted within a 15-mile diameter circle, and I'll show you two local examples here in a second. This circle is fixed for all time, supposedly, so that results from one year can be compared to the next, and results from one circle can be compared to another. The people out there counting birds tally all the birds seen or heard. You can go from midnight to midnight. It's a 24-hour survey, and some people, in fact, get up basically in the middle of the night to go get owls. The way they standardize the data is to measure party hours. So, for example, if I go out for 1 hour on a Christmas bird count, that's a very small effort. And if you've got 200 people out, say for all the daylight hours, that's an enormous effort. So you use the party hours to standardize the counts, and therefore you can compare across counts with rather different levels of effort. It's a super program for beginners because there'll certainly be some expert birders in that group, and it's a wonderful way to get out there and learn from experts and to kind of see how it goes and just have fun. And I've also found that almost invariably, no matter your level of expertise, it's very likely you've had some experience with one or more birds that no one else has had. So sharing those experiences, sharing those stories, it's just how everybody benefits. Last winter, there were 2,615 counts. You can see the circles here. Never mind the colors, it's not important for purposes here. And you can see there are counts well into South America. The counts vary enormously in the number of species. I looked up Tok, Alaska, T-O-K, Alaska last winter. They had 2 species, a boreal chickadee and a common raven, and it was like 20 below zero. One of the Christmas bird counts in Ecuador last year had over 500 species, and I'm sure it was very balmy, equatorial, probably 78 degrees and humid. So here are 2 local counts. The one on the right is the circle for the Boise Christmas bird count, and the one on the left is Nampa. You can see that the Nampa count was obviously centered on Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge, which is smart. A lot of birds are found along riparian areas, shores of lakes, marshes, even a little spring might harbor a couple of species. And so the birders who go out to do these CBCs will disperse themselves throughout this circle and try to visit certainly all the wet spots, and also visit all the habitats that are maybe a little bit unusual. If you've got a cliff or a bunch of dead trees, anything that's sort of a special feature, you want to make sure that people go and visit those, because you want to get as many species as you can. There's kind of a competition to do better than last year, to do better than the next count down the valley, and that sort of thing. Good-natured competition. So I wanted to show you then in the rest of this talk just how to look at Christmas bird count results. If you go to the National Audubon Society's website or just Google Christmas bird count, it'll take you here to one of the options will be results. And when you get to the results page, you want to go way up on the top is this little word that just says historical. It's not completely obvious as that's where you want to go. And you can see about in the middle of this slide, the current year is year 120. So this is a really nice long run of data. So when you click on historical, this will open up, and I won't step through every one of these, but you can see you can select a species. I think you can select up to several species at once. You can select a year range, so you can either go from 1900 to last year, or maybe there's some other period you want to look at, 1950 to 1970, or whatever it might be, so you can snip out that time. You pick a country or a region, and then you can export the results. And I'll show you export real quick. You can either just view the results, which is a graph, and that's what I've done for this talk. When you view it up on your screen, you can use your little snipping tool to snip out the graph and paste it into a PowerPoint. As I said, that's what I've done. You can also export a PDF. You can export the data to Excel if you want to do some other manipulations with the numbers, or to a Word or to a comma-separated values file again, for those who want to work with data and manipulate, they may prefer to have it in that format. So here I'm just picking a few birds sort of that illustrate a couple of different points. So here's pine siskin. And again, you can see way over on the left, that's 1900. So we've got 119 years of data here. The y-axis is the birds per party hour. So again, that's how these counts are standardized across space and across time. The first thing you'll notice is in those early, really up to 1950, there weren't all that many Christmas bird counts across the continent. So you get some numbers that they really go wild. They go from 0 to a high number, then back to 0. It's probably more due to how many people were out there and where they were than what the birds were actually doing. But the last 50 or 60 years, the data is probably pretty good. And one reason I picked pine siskin is because this bird is famous for variation from winter to winter. Like a lot of finches that live in the boreal forest, montane forests, they become very gregarious in the wintertime and flock up sometimes into really big flocks. And if you happen to have a flock, then your count's going to be very high. And if they happen to be over the mountain, you may have 0. So from year to year, they bounce around a lot. And like this and a lot of other species, just looking at Idaho doesn't necessarily tell you what's going on with the species as a whole. This is a widespread bird, and you're going to want to look at the trend at a much larger scale. And if you go into the site yourself, then you can pick whatever scale you want and look at trends in different spaces. Another northern boreal and montane finch that we know is in trouble is the evening grosbeak. You can see the population numbers of this bird for the last 20 or so years has been very low, and there seems to have clearly been a decline over the last 30 or 40 years. So this bird, in fact, is on the cover of the Partners in Flight plan. You may have noticed that because it's widely shared by the US and Canada and has shown a steep decline. Picked house finch. This is the most common bird in Ada County any day of the year, and it's known to have increased across the West over decades. And it's interesting to look at the data for just Idaho. You can see a long-term steady increase, and then it's kind of starting to bounce up and down and go down a little bit. So once again, we don't know if house finch populations are going down, if it's just Idaho, if it's some anomaly that's going to go away. So for a bird like this, you want to look at what's going on in Montana, Utah, Wyoming, Oregon, Washington, and so on, and see if there's a same pattern everywhere, or if this is some sort of variation we can't really explain. Red-breasted nuthatch, some good news. So here's a bird not occurring in huge numbers. If you look at those dots, you'll see they're anywhere from 0.1 to half a bird per party hour. So I go out for myself for 1 hour, I'm going to see half a nuthatch on average. So, but the good news is those guys look like they've been increasing ever so slightly, but it's kind of a long, steady increase. And of course, you can run statistical analyses on these, and I would bet that if you ran a regression through that line, it's going to be significant and up. American robin is a really fun one because, like siskins, they tend to vary a lot from year to year. During the breeding season, they're out there running around. It seems like there's one robin on each lawn. They're spaced out very nicely, eating earthworms. And then when fall comes around, obviously they leave that situation. They start to flock up. And in the winter, they can occur in flocks of many hundreds of individuals, and they become fruit eaters. So they're cruising the landscape looking for choke cherries, juniper berries, any other sort of fruit that they can survive on through the winter, mountain ash, and so on. So they vary quite a bit, and you can see them bouncing up and down over time. It looks like in Idaho, these data are probably pretty stable, even though there's a lot of variation. Mountain chickadee, this is another bird that looks like it has a long-term stable population. Again, the numbers are quite low on average, but they're always quite low. Yeah, and this bird is on the Idaho list not because of southwestern Idaho that we know they're pretty rare around here on our feeders in the winter, but in the north and the eastern part of the state, central part of the state, up by Salmon, you're gonna have a lot more mountain chickadees. So they show up as pretty stable across a large region in Idaho. I picked common raven because I think everybody knows that ravens have been increasing at a tremendous rate, and you can see that shows very clearly here, even though there's been I was surprised to see how much variation there has been over the Christmas bird counts, but the increase is quite steep and quite obvious. Another bird I picked because I know they've been increasing tremendously is Eurasian collared dove. And notice on this one on the x-axis, I'm only going back to 2004, not back to 1900. And that's because no collared doves were seen on Christmas bird counts in Idaho until 2005. So that certainly was the case in my neighborhood. In fact, I didn't see any until about 2015 in northwest Boise. So this is a bird that didn't exist in Idaho and has exploded on the scene, increased dramatically across the continent, not just Idaho. And it's really interesting to see that 2 years ago, for the first time, they declined on the Christmas bird count data. And last year they declined again, even more steeply than between the previous two winters. So this is interesting. We immediately wonder if the collared dove is finally plateaued. Is it finally, gone everywhere it can go, and is it starting to drop back to some lower level of population? Will it stabilize? Will it bounce around? We have no idea. I don't know if anybody even has a notion of how to predict what's going to happen. So it's fun to speculate about this, but as we count birds from year to year to year to year, we will get an answer to this looming puzzle sooner or later. One of the more common questions I get from people is, well, all these collared doves everywhere, how are they impacting mourning doves? And if you were to look at this graph and look at the previous graph, you might say, well, collared doves are going up and mourning doves are going down. This is obviously a decrease. Last winter's count was the lowest, again, since 2004. I'm putting these on the same axis so you can compare these two doves. So it looks like they're really going down, and whether or not it's a result of mourning collared doves, we don't know. In my experience, I don't see much interaction between these two species, and I see them perching in some places together in trees. The collared doves seem much more attracted to small pastures and small rural towns where there's a lot of livestock and a few houses scattered around, whereas mourning doves, I see them almost anywhere far, far out into the sagebrush country and into some lower elevation mountains. So we'll see. We don't, I think, know what the relationship is yet between these two doves. So that's a quick spin through the Christmas bird count and the data and where you can look at data. And anytime you go in there and start looking around, you're going to probably get questions that emerge in your mind. And sometimes you can just go and look at other data, what's going on in Wyoming, what's going on in Canada, to sort of quickly test your hypotheses. And other times you're just going to sort of be left scratching your head. Christmas bird count is it's a great tradition for birders, and put on some warm clothes, get some coffee or hot chocolate in a thermos, and like I said, I don't know what exactly we're going to do this year. We won't be getting too close together. Probably everybody's going to be driving separately and with just their family members. I hope everybody will stay safe, but look for an opportunity to get out there and have some fun in the winter with birds.